Alright people, how's it going today? So, this video is actually, piggybacking and responding to Alpha Investment's thesis on the market. And I happen to completely agree with what he is saying. This market is not going to last forever. It's going to go to astronomical levels, and there's absolutely no way that anyone, not you, me, nobody, is going to know where it's going to go, how high it's going to go, or when it's going to drop off. We can predict possibly after Christmas. We could possibly predict March next year. It could be a 2-year run. It could be a 3-year run. It all really just absolutely depends on what people's appetites are, what kind of products are coming onto the market, and how much saturation occurs, and what overall prevailing sentiment is. So there's no way that we're going to know what exactly is going to happen at all. So that being said, I do have a couple of predictions on this. One, all of these new cards and stuff are going to continue to go up in value. That's bottom line. I don't think that the Pokemon Company is going to do anything that is going to change their current course that they're on. They're not going to flood the market with inventory. They want the price to go up, and they want a continued level of interest in these products. And that being said, a lot of people, they are now, over the course of many years, they've been blocked out of the real estate market. They've made some gains in the stock market and trading options. Some have made it with Forex. Some have somehow managed to get into some level of real estate even without any money. But a lot of those loopholes are closing up. They're competing with large institutions that have much broader amounts of capital. They're competing with a very strict lending environment. Now we're competing with high interest rates. So where are you going to put your money? If you have money, it's going to be very difficult to find sorts of returns that alternative assets that are esoteric would otherwise provide. And for that matter, I mean, you're taking on more risk doing this. Baseball cards, Pokemon cards, that's what I'm into. So recently, baseball cards, because it's the 35th anniversary for Topps, there's a lot of opportunity in that market, and it makes a great talking point for these videos. And I think that there's a great opportunity for crossover when you're looking at Pokemon cards and you're looking at baseball cards. There's a great opportunity, there's a tremendous opportunity for good conversation. So, that all being said, I think they both serve as very valuable alternative asset classes for at least the next 12 months. And the Series 2 Topps that just came out, they're relatively good to purchase. I've been buying them up, and my strategy on that is to get as many cards as possible. Just pile up the rookies. Don't go crazy going for the chase cards. A lot of people go and they'll buy the stuff for the chase cards. That's a game that you can play. I'm going with the more conservative game of just owning the entire set with base hits. If those cards go up 5 times from where I bought them in like 2-3 years, that's okay. That's all right. And a lot of them won't. A lot of them are going to just be wax. They're going to be zero. It's when you buy baseball cards, that market is either you win or you lose. There's no in between with it. It's very clear cut. It's straight, cut and dry, very straightforward, and it's also a very liquid market that is popular among people who are like hedge fund managers. They're popular among traders, like stock and options traders, guys who work at hedge funds, guys who work on Wall Street. They'll go for that stuff. That not so much the tech bro crowd. Maybe some of them do, but the tech types are more towards the Pokemon stuff. And there are a whole bunch of other alternative assets and other little interesting things that people get into. And it's not necessarily one way or the other. It's a whole splatter, and this is a true alternative investment class, and it falls under the broad category of collectibles. Now, the biggest problem with the Pokemon card market is the fact that it's very illiquid. It is a thinly traded market by institutional standards. It is like trading penny stocks, essentially, but even on a smaller level, because there's less of an inventory and there's absolutely no real institutional demand. This is hobby driven, just like baseball cards. Yes, you'll see them go to auction at Sotheby's or Christie's or any of the other auction houses. Possibly sometimes Heritage. It all just depends. So when you look at this, you got to be grounded in the level of reality that when you're buying these things, you are not guaranteed a W. You're absolutely not. I'm absolutely not guaranteed that I'm going to be a millionaire or rich or pokey rich or whatever else that is. I will be pokey rich because I'm going to hold on to the these. But the point is that you are not supposed to look at this as something that you put your entire life savings into. You don't do that. Now, Alpha Investments, he's talked about stocks that he owns. He's talked about a whole bunch of other different sorts of asset classes. He has a diversified portfolio. He's not 100% in on just this. And he is 1,000% right when he says that being an investor, you are taking on many months of essentially, and forgive my language, a mind fuck. It's a real mind fuck to hold on to something that you don't know where the bottom is. You can buy something at 30 cents, and that 30 cents 10 months later could be trading at 10 cents. 66% of your liquidity gone right there. 66%. And in worst cases, nobody wants anything, not even for a penny, because there's no way they can resell it. The market's just dry at that point. And then suddenly, years later, it just pops up to hundreds of dollars out of nowhere. So that is the problem with the collectibles market, and those are the kinds of price swings that you need to be able to weather and handle. So this is basically something where, and this is this is education. I don't want to say financial advice because I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube. But this is education that the likelihood of these things being a guaranteed W at the end of the day is a crapshoot. You can ponder and you can map and you can put all the mathematics and all the probability analysis, all the kinds of crap together. And you can think of something as, yes, this is terrific. But when the market says otherwise, the market really says otherwise. For example, let's look at these cards that I've got here. Black Star Pikachu, I bought with a group of other cards. That was actually super cheap. It was like next to nothing. Charizard. I spent $300 on that Charizard along with the other 5, 6, or 7 that I've got. Blastoise, I spent $200 on that. Venusaur, the shadowless one right there, that one I spent around $300 on. The Gengar, I think I bought that for $250 or $300 as well. But the point is, it's not about the money. Now, a lot of people would say that those are terrible deals. Why would you ever pay that much for a raw card? Well, you know what? Same reason why Roaring Kitty said he bought all those options on GameStop. I like the stock. I like the cards. That's pretty much it. And that is the principal truth behind investing in this market, in the Pokemon market, and it's the same thing with baseball, because you like it. That is the number one reason that you should be in this market. Only if you are connected to it. If you're tied to it, if you are diehard and you're saying, absolutely, yes, this is where it's going to go, this is my conviction, and damn the analysis, go right ahead. Be like me. In my first video, that is exactly what I was going at. Where I don't care if this is worth millions of dollars or a stick of bubble gum. Okay? Doesn't matter to me. I got it. And a lot of people are like that with their dollars. But you know what happened with their dollars when they held their dollars over the last 10 years? Inflation ate 66% of your buying power over the last 10 years. You could buy a beer for $2.53 a beer at a bar, right? You could do that. Now you're spending $7, $8, $9 for one beer. That's just a very, very micro example of it. Now let's look at housing prices. You buy a house, how much are you spending on that? Or say you've got, you're buying groceries. That's something that people can absolutely relate to. You know how much the cost of groceries have gone up, and it's not just from tariffs. No, you know, Trump's just the latest iteration of the inflation. It's going to be deflation someday too, by the way. Keep that in mind. It's going to be it's down the road. We don't know when, but it's going to happen at some point. Because you're going to see an unraveling. When we right now our GDP can handle the current environment, the current economic environment. It can be weathered. It will be strained, but it certainly can be weathered, and it can also be reeled back. But you have to remember, inflation has been creeping up since the 1970s, since when we went off the gold standard. All right? That is just a simple truth. And what happens when a country does not back their money in something tangible that is tied to reality? Well, you become a debt-based system. So when it's a debt-based system, you have a lot of expansion and a lot of growth, and money changes hands every day, rapidly. You have high velocity of money. So right now you've got a very high velocity of cards trading hands. And there is currently a little bit of a race to the bottom in some products, but not many of them. The market's actually holding up surprisingly well in Pokemon cards. You can flip things from these stores for 2x still. You can. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. What I do sort of have a problem with is when people take it too far. They're buying up an entire store and they're not leaving any for anyone else. That's just rude. That's like reaching across the table. Don't do that, And you also notice something within the Pokemon card market. These guys here that you see, right? Those guys, the vintage cards are not at their all-time highs. That is something that is very worthy of note. Now, when they start participating in this surge, as people sort of look for value, as they have more discretionary capital to throw around, they're going to start hitting the vintage cards again, hard. Now, I'm going to say that the prices are probably going to go up 3, 4, 5 times, 10 times what they previously were for vintage cards. They've held their value spectacularly well. And where I actually predict the crash is going to be is in the PSA grading system. And the reason for that is because PSA has a different standard from Beckett. And Beckett says your centering needs to be 50-50, perfect alignment in order to get a 10 for them. That's just to get a 10. That's not even considering Black Label. Black Label is like, it's got to be so pure, so good, that there's no debating it. And there are very, very few cards out there that are 6 Sigma standard. That is what they're looking at, 6 Sigma. If you remember the Lean Six Sigma, program for manufacturing and all that, then that's what I'm talking about. 6 standard deviations above the norm, perfection. 99.99999% is what they look for in that grading system for Beckett, for Black Label. Now, when you look at PSA, they are allowing for a 60-40 or 40-60 variance. The problem is you're going to get a lot of cards that aren't actually gem. They call it gem, and it's to, promote enough of these cards to have a market for them, and it's sort of like a sign-off to say, yeah, this is good enough to be liquid. That's what they're doing with the PSA 10. But when real investors start coming in, like the real hardcore guys who really, really, really are particular, very particular about what they are going for, they're going to look at Beckett as the standard of what they actually want, especially if they're talking about someone who is worth 100 million plus, or even 50 million plus, or 25 million plus, someone who's got money that they can just throw around. They're going to want the best of the best, and they want something that they can wow their friends with. Because when you know, if I'm like pulling cards, I'm like, oh, this is awesome, this is really cool. I'm like, you know, I'm excited in these videos sometimes. You know, that's just human. I can be excited sometimes in these videos. That's the bottom line. But at the same time, I also take stock of what I just did. Now, maybe I thought that I had a whole bunch of error cards and this was a crazy early run batch. Well, no, it turns out like these Topps 2025 cards, they have a pop out of, you know, they pop out, kind of, you know, from the frame. And, you know, they look good. They have some, you know, I call it card personality quirks that make them different from previous editions. But it's also, remember, the 20, 30, there I go, numbers. Math is hard. The math is not mathing right now. So here's what they, all right, we're doing that again. Even though, you know, they've got these eccentricities, these cards have these personalities to them. Somebody down the line, if those don't ever get printed again that way, they're going to be very sought after, even the basic ones, because it's 35th anniversary. So that is a good reason just to buy these guys, just to, you know, just to make sure you've got something. And I don't necessarily believe in just like hoarding the packs and not opening them. And this is where Alpha Investments and my strategy actually kind of, you know, we part ways. I am looking for the cards. I like the cards, and I am playing a different game than he is. Alpha Investments is playing on a much bigger scale than I am. Okay, let's not get that one twisted. He's been in it longer. He's been in it since, like, you know, Magic the Gathering, and that is old school respect that we got to give him. He's got, you know, I'm done. You know, I don't have anything to say. I have nothing to say that is going to detract from that guy, and instead I show that guy some major respect because I've watched some of his videos and I was listening to it when I'm, you know, like if I'm going for a walk, I just like put that in and I'm just like listening to what he's saying and I go, yup, that's right. I go, yup, that's right. And I go, well, you know, maybe I don't necessarily agree with that at first, you know, like when he was saying that the bubble's going to pop, but, you know, he's not talking about that as an imminent, like, immediate thing. He's like exactly what I said. He goes and he says, yeah, you know what? This is going to be something that's going to happen down the line eventually because he's seen the cycles before. He's been watching this stuff since the beginning, back way in the 90s. I was born in 1990, okay? That was, by the way, Topps, okay? So 35. Okay, yeah, we got something in common here, I guess. But look, the thing is, he's entirely right. And no matter how much math you try to throw at an investment vehicle or at a product, it comes down to market psychology. So if you want to look at all your different analysis, your charts, your Elliott waves, your market psychology, and try to predict what your friend is going to do, what the way that the actual secret sauce for funds is to get in before their pension fund buddies and before their big bulge bracket bank buddies take big positions. It's front running. It's sophisticated front running, and that's how they actually make their money in the hedge fund space. That's how they make it in private equity as well. Private equity can even bend the rules even further because it's private equity. It's not public markets. So in private equity, you have all kinds of different, you know, the gloves are off, and you know how M&A works. You know, people who really know mergers and acquisitions, they understand this game. They will know exactly what I'm talking about right now. They will 100% understand what I am talking about. I'm talking about those guys who have been long-time baseball card guys. You know, those are the guys who are at the hedge funds, who are at the trading firms, who work in M&A, who went to the baseball game with their dad. They go to Yankee Stadium with their dad, and they watch the big game. They watch everything. They watch the World Series, sometimes maybe even in box seats, depending on how generous their company was, or how they might have had some good years back in the 90s or something, or in the 80s where, you know, it's like the Wild West out there. You know, that kind of stuff is huge. That is absolutely what these guys remember and what they are fond of. And for me, Pokemon was kind of a little bit of that nostalgia, just like baseball was to these guys who are big, and they just love this market because it brings them back away from the corporate bullshit back to where they are now, back to their sort of childhood, and it's like, it's something that's never left them. It grounds them. They love this stuff. But these are the guys that, right now I'm talking to you guys, and this is the thing that you'll respect. And when it comes down to the finance game, there are so many scams now. There are so many gimmicks. There's so much bullshit. The moment that you hear someone actually telling you the truth and saying, yeah, you know what, the whole thing's rigged. Yeah, you're right, it's rigged. It's rigged in many different ways. And without any rigging, though, you don't have a market. That's why it's heavily regulated, in order to stop bad actors from going in, extracting capital from investors. And you know what? I could name 100 case studies where they've had bad actors into the even billions of dollars. But out of respect as well, I'm not going to name names. I won't name names because that is just, I'm not here to disrespect anyone. And I'm not here to cause some controversy that would be otherwise unprofessional, it's unsavory. We don't even talk about that when that happens, but we all know who I'm referring to when I say this kind of stuff. And that is just part of the level of authenticity that if you know, you know. And, there are some very, very fascinating case studies on how everything works. And there is a correct way and an incorrect way to actually insider trade as well. It is not actually entirely illegal for the, quote, insider trading to occur. It is illegal to take inside information and then front run the market after pumping and dumping a stock or other sort of security, or say like bid rigging Libra or something like that. That's wrong. You can't, because it completely screws up the integrity of the markets, the integrity of the game. It's the same thing as if someone goes and they juice up before a game, or if they inject their horse with some steroids, or if they do some other kind of unsavory bullshit. It's not sporting. That is number one thing about it. You can have all the money in the world, or you can be dirt fucking poor. As long as you have a level of integrity, and if you have a moral compass of any kind, that is worth its weight in gold and some. So that is what all this stuff represents. This is why this market is also taking off. This is in lieu of the housing market. This is in lieu of getting into crypto scams. This is in lieu of all the corporate bullshit. This is the pure outsider play. It is not anywhere near what you would see in any corporate boardroom. If you want to operate outside the system, and you want to set your own terms, your own rules, and you want a fair play system, this is where you go. And maybe, flippers are taking advantage of the inventory and they're marking up the price 4x and all that kind of thing. But something that the general population also needs to understand is that these assets have value. And wherever there is value, it's like saying, well, he's marking this up. I could go get the gold from the mine for the price of a shovel and a wash pan or a pan, like one of the pans that they use for the, I don't know, back in the day. You could go pan for gold. And you know what? It might cost you maybe $40-50, but buying the gold per ounce is $3,000 plus now. Okay? That's per ounce. So, apples, there's a debate to be had there, but there's also a point where they are coming from a place of reason where it's like, hey, 1, 2, 3, 4 groups are just buying up the whole thing, and now we're all being left out to, that sort of monopolistic behavior. And, the big companies, they try to be fair the best that they can with this. GameStop especially, depending on the employees, who you go to, how you buy, they can be very good, and they want to actually cut down on this in order to maintain the integrity of the market for these products. Now, I'm going to be very honest right now. All these baseball cards I've been buying have been from the same GameStop, and I bought out every single Series 2025. But at the same time, at that location, there really was not a market for them. These have been sitting on the shelves for a long time. They have not just come in, they haven't just come in on a whim. They were sitting there. They were there, and finally someone, me, picked them up. So that is where the ethical part comes in. If a store has product and it is not moving, then what you do, it is fair play. After about a month or two, it's just like sitting there. Then what do? Or a month. Let's say if it's been sitting there a month. Then it's fair play. But if it's the same day and everyone's lined up, like they're ready to, like they're jumping on a Black Friday sale at Walmart or something, it's, it's dramatic, it's exciting, it's wild, but that's not really what your casual people want. And, that's just part of the nature of the beast with this stuff, okay? And, that's just something to kind of consider, and it needs to be where your own conscience sort of plays its part. So, if you agree or disagree with me, absolutely leave it right in the comments, okay? I want to know what you think, if what I did was wrong or if it was ethical. I want to actually know your opinion on that, because, I think that's something to be had. And, that opens up a good conversation to really understanding and really dissecting what it means to, get into this market and to what extent should you be in the market. Another thing that you should also consider about me is that I am not actively selling these cards, these baseball cards, just yet, and, I might end up holding on to them. I do have some listed online just because, I'm sort of like testing the market. I'm getting a lot of views. I have them listed up in New York. I'm down in Savannah, okay? I'm in Savannah, Georgia. I've got these things listed up in New York. So, it's really interesting to see people looking and how they think and what their perceptions are. So I actually want to know your feedback. Again, I'm responding to how Alpha Investments have presented in their last two videos that they uploaded yesterday, and also I believe like either a few days or a few weeks, but I don't know when the other one was, because I watched two of them and they both hit on this topic, and he brought up a ton of great points. I think that I don't need to really talk about it. I would rather have someone go there, watch his videos, and come back here, comment, let me know what you think, if I'm right or wrong. Absolutely, let me know, because I think that what he says is absolute pure gold, and people should be paying attention. That is one thing for sure. And I also think that if you're involved in Pokemon, you should also be looking at baseball. And if you're in baseball, you should absolutely look at Pokemon, because one, Pokemon is actually a bigger market than the baseball market now. If that makes any kind of sense to anyone. That is absolutely wild. But if you look at the global people that are interested in Pokemon, it is about 1.5 to 2 billion people. That is absolutely absurd for a hobby. So, as opposed to baseball cards being mostly American, there is some Japanese crossover, of course there is. A little bit in Canada, not so much in Mexico. They got, it's a pretty, these are niche spaces. And, but the point is, if you're doing this, not just as a hobby, but because you actually enjoy collecting something, it absolutely makes sense, to look over the fence and see like, hey, what does the grass look like over there? You know what I mean? So, with that, keep that in mind. Like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have a great day.